Hello and welcome back to RPG Maker MZ with Puzzle Collection. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different than the usual eventing type stuff. I'm just going to demonstrate the puzzle here. So if we go up to the chest, the ghost says it's locked. We have to beat him in a game in order to open it. So let's talk to the ghost. So today we're going to be looking at troop events, which is to say getting the eventing script system to work in combat, which is how we're getting this text to pop up here. And we will be, on top of that, we will be also showing how common events work. So troop events and common events, two very useful things if you're new to RPG Maker. They're definitely things that it's good to know about. This was an attempt at making a puzzle using this. So what this game is we're trying to make the other person say 31. And each time it's our turn, we can count 1, 2, or 3. So I'll add 1, go up 12. The ghost's AI is not very good. He's just doing it randomly at the moment. So it's 15. So we'll do 2, which would put it at 17. I'm just demonstrating that these all work. 19, yeah, going random. And if I do a 3, we should get up to 22. $25. We'll do 1. 29. And I'm not going to demonstrate what happens if you lose. The scripting for that's pretty simple. I've tested it and I'll show you that it works. You've beaten me, you may claim your prize. And 0 gold. Okay, so the chest works once we've defeated him. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So for preparation, in order to get this set up, we need a switch that triggers when we beat the enemy. We beat the encounter so that we can open the chest. We need 4 variables to track the current position of the count. So what value we're at, what value, how many times we're incrementing that value, what that value is +1, and what that value is +2. This we need just because of a limitation of how text works in RPG Maker. There might be a way around it, but the way I solved this problem was having 3 separate variables, because our text line, if I just give a quick spoiler of that, is going to be referencing 3 different variables, and we can't, in the text as far as I know, we can't set these independently, because ideally I would have variable 6 plus 1, variable 6 plus 2. But because this is inside a text, I don't think I can do that. So using 3 separate variables is my way around that. So the enemy itself, we are on draw mode. Let's go to event mode. Then things will actually work when I click. Enemy itself is going to be pretty simple. We're going to go with a crypt ghost here. And give it an icon. One thing I found while doing this was that MZ, the engine itself, is better, I think, than VXAce or MV. But those other engines had way better default assets. I do not like the default assets for MZ. Now, fortunately, as far as I understand... sorry, so we're going science fiction... Oh, it's up here, okay. Science fiction monster. Yeah. So as far as I know, if you own multiple versions of RPG Maker, you're allowed to import the graphics that came with one of them into a project that you're making in the other. So in my case, I guess I could make an MZ game, but use VXAce graphics if I wanted to. So that's just a thing to kind of mention on the side here. Anyways, we have our event. Same as characters, action button. This stuff you can kind of just do whatever. I think this is the settings I had on it, so it's going to be constantly moving slowly, basically. This doesn't really matter. And then we're going to create the event. So first thing that we want to do is take our count value. This is the variable that we're going to be counting up, and we want to set it to 0 at the beginning of each encounter, otherwise weird things will happen. So set it to 0. Then we're going to go to battle processing, and I will show how to set that stuff up in a moment. But basically you're just going to take your enemy and we're going to set that up. Now I'm actually going to put a can lose as well. So if win or lose, something happens. If we beat the ghost, then we gain access to the treasure. So let's set that. Control switch. Crypt ghost, that's the one. Turn it on. And if we lose, so yeah, I think here I have... Oh yeah, you have beaten me in text. You can put some dialogue there if you want to. I'm not going to bother for this. Same way if you lose, I'm going to put... where is it? Recover all, there it is. Recover all entire party. This is because in battle what we're going to do if the player messes up is we're just going to kill the entire party. So this is going to, you know, if they lose, they don't actually lose the game, they just lose the encounter, and then we'll recover them so they don't come out of the encounter with 1 HP or whatever. Alright, and then, of course, if we beat them... Did I put this down? I did. Okay, self-switch. Yes, and then new event page, self-switch A is on. That just gets rid of the ghost. So once you've beaten the ghost, you can't fight it again. And that's it for this. I guess while we're here, I don't have this written down in my notes, but it's just a quick thing we can do. Quick event creation, treasure. I'll show how this works. We'll just have a default treasure chest with 0, that's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to go new event page. Actually, what I should have done is copy event page, paste event page. And then this first one, what am I doing? Delete, okay. It's kind of awkward because you can't, when you copy and paste, oh, I guess there's a clear event page button. I could have just done that. That might have been slightly more efficient. Anyway, I want page 1 to not be, well, okay, you know what? This is why I normally do notes, because I like to have a plan here. So if I go clear event page, it just deletes everything. Okay. Copy paste. So what we're instead just doing, we're just going to manually delete all of this. So we have a chest, direction fix, same as characters, action button. But if we do this, sci-fi monster, crypt ghost. I don't need quotes on this. You must defeat me first. Okay. Something like that. Preview that if you want to. And then here, switch here. So we have it switch the crypt ghost if we beat it. So this makes it so that we actually get the treasure instead of the text message. All right. So that is our treasure chest setup. This is our ghost setup. However, we have a lot of work left to do. So first, enemies. We're going to set up a crypt ghost enemy. For this enemy, I deliberately set it so no rewards, no items, no traits, and no attacks, because we're not going to be using the in-game attack system. We're going to be scripting our own, essentially. So from here, we then go to troops. Yeah, we're going to go to troops. And, well, I guess change maximum. Let's just build this up from the start. We have a reference right there. So this is going to be Crypt Ghost enemy. We have Crypt Ghost as an enemy, so we'll add it. There it is. Yeah, there's an auto name option if you want to. Change background you can do. Battle test you can do as well, which will just open up this menu so you can choose your starting party or whatever if you want to do for that. One tip I do have for that is to go to System 1 and delete all the music, especially Battle and Victory, I guess, and Defeat. Because otherwise you're going to blow your eardrums out every single time you try to test in-game. Or is it troops? Because this plays the music very loudly. I mean, I guess you can change the music to not be so loud as well. But that's a free tip there. I highly recommend doing that. So battle events, how does this work? Well, let's start by So I have my ghost events here. So conditions. We're going to want an event that plays every single turn. Starts when all the actions of enemies and actors have finished, so turn end. So every turn this is going to happen. Span. It's unfortunate that's cutting off there, but we have 3 options here. Battle is it will only happen once per battle. Turn is it'll happen every turn that the condition is met. And moment, I actually haven't played around with moment, but I think that's... I guess... Okay. Isn't that just the same as battle? Oh, okay, no, looking at the tooltip here, moment... Oh, okay. If I wait, then it does fix the tooltip. Interesting. Does it? Yeah, repeat when the conditions are met. I guess moment is like turn, but more than once per turn. So if you want something that can happen multiple times per turn, you would do moment. I'm going to go with turn. So at every turn, at the end of the turn, this plays. And then we're just going to... Well, so here we have common event, and I'm going to show why we want to use common events later, but let's skip the common event for now, and we're just going to do the common event, which is this nonsense here. That's the player logic, so we're going to do that right here. So to start with, we're going to give the player a choice. At the end of each turn, do you count 1, 2, or 3 times? Cancel, there is no cancel choice, we're not going to allow it. Default, we'll start at 1, sure. So if the player is not using the mouse and they're just using enter or whatever, they'll hit default option 1. That's fine. Show choices, win 1, win 2, and win 3. So, control variable. Well, this first part is going to be fairly straightforward. Count increment. This is how much we're increasing the value by. If we choose 1, we increase the value by 1. Probably guess what we're doing with these. Choose 2, increase value by 2. Choose 3, increase value by 3. So that handles the when statements. So now, our count value, we're going to increment it by 1. So at the start of the game, we start with a value of 0. No matter which choice we choose, the value will increase by 1. So this is just how I've chosen to do this. There are other ways to do this, but this is my method. So guaranteed we're going to go to at least 1. Then, and because of that text issue I was showing you with variable 8, variable 9, we're going to have to also prime the count variables, and we're going to set those to be equal to the count value. So count value is what happens if we increment by 1. That is our count value. But if we increment by 2, which is count plus 1, again, I could probably have picked better variable names for this, we're going to then get count plus 1 equal to count value, and then we're going to add 1 to it. So count plus 1 is now 1 higher than count value. Copy those again and do the same thing for count plus 2. So count plus 2 is 2 higher than count value, right? 3 is 2 higher than 1. Makes sense. All right, then we do our logic. So the first thing that we want to do here is change what the player chose. So if the player chooses 1, 2, or 3, that's great. But let's say that the value the ghost gave us was 30. So in this case, in the case of 30, we've already lost because we have to choose 1, 2, or 3. No matter what we choose, we're going to hit 31. But we want to prevent the game from counting up to 32 or 33. So to prevent that, we're going to do some if statements here, conditional branch, which is if not switches, if variable, count plus 1, this is 1 higher than, so remember we started at 30, so if we add 1 to it, by default we're at 31, count plus 1 is 1 higher than that, which is 32. So if count plus 1 equals 32, that means we've overshot. And in this case, we're going to say that The player's value is just 1. So they chose 1, and I just realized that there's a logical failure in here, so let's just fix this real quick. If count plus 2, if count plus 2 equals 32, so this is the case where we start at 29 and we choose to count 3. That's the only time this should trigger. We choose to count up 3, so 29, so count is going to be 30, and then 2 higher than that is 32, which we don't want, so in this case we want count increment to equal to 2. And by setting it like this, this should work. I'm doubting myself now. I'm pretty sure this works. Okay. So from here then we need to go conditional branch for each choice. So again, keep putting switches. If count increment is equal to 1. So if we're adding 1 to our value, then I have a conditional branch here if player actor is in party. You can do something like this if you have a game where you can choose which character you want to have as the main character. I'm not going to bother including those in this example, so we're just going to choose text. We're just going to assume that there's only really one person you can be, which is this kid. Alright, and we're just going to count the variable. So to do that, if you do something like this, it doesn't work because I don't have a value in here. But yeah, if you do that and preview it, this is going to return the value of a variable. Now in the editor, this is always going to show a 0. But in-game, it'll show different values here. So I think I had variable 6 was equal to, yeah, variable 6. So if we preview that, variable 6 is equal to the count value that we're currently at. We've already added 1 to it. And this is why we already add 1 to it, because then down here this just works. So if we add 1, that's what we get. Copy paste. What if we're adding 2? Well, we need to change this a little bit. So if you just hold the mouse here, you can see these control characters. These are all of the different things that you can include in a text box. So \v is the value of a variable. We're going to use \period here to delay slightly. This might be kind of annoying for your players, so it's up to you as to whether or not you wish to have a delay or not. But that's how I've chosen to do this. So here we're going to go \v for variable 6. Then we're going to have a ¼ delay followed by a period. ¼ delay followed by a period. ¼ delay followed by a period. ¼ delay followed by, and then its variable 8 is count plus 1. So if we preview that, that's what it looks like. And this is also the effect that you'll get if you remove all of these delays. You'll just instantly get that. All right, and of course, because we've gotten to this point, another thing that we're going to have to do here is our count value. We have to add 1 to it. And that's just so that when it's the ghost's turn, the ghost is going to know what value we're starting from. And the reason that we have this in the if statement instead of just increasing the count, up here, for example, is that it would mess up our dialogue strings. So we have to do this dialogue print before we actually change what the count value is. Because this variable 6 is going to be the wrong value otherwise. All right, one more time. Count, if we choose 3, we get this, and we'll just change this again. Oops, no space there. So we'll do 3 more. We'll do an ellipsis and ¼ second increments, followed by another variable. This is variable 9. Looks good. Especially when you're using these backslashes, I highly recommend using preview, just to make sure that you don't have anything weird going on in here that you're not expecting. Alright, and of course, in this case, the 6 has to be increased by 2 in order to give the accurate number, and I put these in the wrong spots, so let's just switch these. Copy, paste. Right, so increment by 2, we count twice, add 1. And increment by 3, we count 3 times, and then increment here by 2. Good. All right. Now we have to see if the player lost. If the player lost, well, when does the player lose? Player loses if our total value now is equal to 31. It should be impossible to get higher than 31, but just in case I do a greater than or equal. So if we are greater than or equal to 31, show text, and we'll use our kid again. Oh no. All right, and then here is where, sorry kid, but this might hurt a little bit. Entire party decreases, and take 9,999 damage because you weren't able to count. That'll teach you for sleeping in math class. All right. And there we go. So this is a lot of text, as you can see in here. And this is only half of what we want to do at the end of the turn, because we still have to do the ghost's turn. So this is where common events come in. And common events, see this player count here, is the same thing as our event that we just wrote. It does have an else statement here because I do have player select in this game, so there are actually 2 different characters that you can choose. But that's what this is. So at this point I would realize this is getting a little bit messy, and so I would Control A, Control C, copy the whole thing, go to common event, and paste it in here like this. I'm not actually going to do that. I'm just going to assume that we've done that into player count, and then go back to troops. So this thing that we've written, we've copied that into that event. Instead of writing it in here now, we can just go common event, player count. And that is equivalent to all of that script that we just wrote, because that will trigger this. And this is just a very useful thing to do, to be able to do. And then we're basically going to write the same thing again. I don't know if I actually need to demonstrate this because this is literally the same event as what we just had. The only difference that I can think of is that the ghost is doing something at random. I guess I can just use the text. I don't need to do this in-game. So the start is we go random. I guess I can just quickly show how that works. Control variable. So this is count increment, and it's just a random number from 1 to 3. So that is the ghost choosing a value between 1 and 3. And then the rest of this is pretty much the same, with the exception that we're looking at these values here. If count plus 1 equals 32, which is to say the ghost had the ability to win but overshot the result, we're going to reduce the ghost's result choice so that they do not overshoot. And the rest of this is pretty much the same. But in this case, party member, that shouldn't be there. In this case, the ghost on failure will kill the ghost instead of the player, obviously, and then we set that switch to turn the crypt ghost on. Alright. So assuming that we've written that and then copied it into ghost count, or just included that here, we now have another common event that we can do. So common event, ghost count, and there we have it. At the end of every turn, the player gets to count from 1 to 3, add it to the total, then the ghost gets to count from 1 to 3, add it to the total. Now there is one problem with the way that I've set this up, and that is that if the player loses, counts up to 30, 31 or higher, the player's going to die, and then the ghost is still going to count. So this is a way you could have an event where if the player dies, then at the end of the turn you could have, you know, a fairy revives the player or something like that. So the player dying doesn't actually end the battle immediately. It only ends the battle at the end of the turn after all of this has been processed. So in order to make sure that the ghost isn't doing that inappropriately, we're just going to check our variable here, which is our count value. And if this is greater than or equal to 31, that means that the player has lost. Which means we don't want the ghost to do anything. So instead, we're just going to have this less than 30. Is that what I did here? Less than or equal to 30. Less than or equal to 30, yes. Of course. So less than or equal to 30 means the game is not over after the player's turn. Then the ghost has to do something. Alright. And that sets up the entire ghost encounter. Now we're going to go new event page here, just real quick. I'll show this. So on turn 0, once per battle, so this is at the start of the battle, before anything happens. Then we're going to have the ghost give an evil monologue or something. Okay. So now, player, there is one thing that I noticed that was wrong, so I've been trying to avoid this, but then like I fixed the one thing, but then I deleted it when I copied, so before we actually test this, I will fix it because it's going to bother me otherwise. Which is that under common events, when we're doing the player count, this one I did change. If you remember, count plus 1 equals 32. This means that we have counted either 2 or 3, well, specifically 2 in this case, equals 32. This means that we overshot when we chose a 2. But maybe we had 29 at the beginning, and we count 3, which would give us 30, 31, 32. So it is possible to overcount with a 3 as well. So let's just fix this real quick. And in this case, the way to do that is if count plus 2 equals 32, which is to say we overshot by counting up by 3, we instead count up by 2. Now we could check 30, 31, 32, 31, 32, 33. It is possible to shoot up to 33 by counting by 3, but that's going to be covered in this case, because in that case the 2 and the 3 would both fail and they'll both be caught by this. Alright, so again, if count plus 2 equals 32, that means that counting up by 3 was wrong. These should never happen, now that I think about it, because we've set the ghost to try to win. No, that's not true, actually. If you have a 30, the ghost is forced to fail. I don't think the ghost, in that logic, will just do whatever. So it doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway, this was kind of a mess as far as the tutorials go, but the main point, yeah, I must defeat first. And in the end of all this, I didn't even use the thing that we wrote because I had a different event that I already did here. So this is the one that we just wrote. It's basically the same, but with less dialogue. But yeah, the main point of this is to see how you can do stuff in battle, and then also use common events in order to make your battle code more legible. The other reason to use common events is just if you have something happening a lot within a game, and you don't want to be copying the same code over and over. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head of something like that. Because obviously when you had those crate puzzles with, 20 crates in a room, you're just copying the event over and over, which is fine. But I guess common event, you could use it for something where maybe you have a bunch of different places where you can give a password or something like that. I'm really having trouble thinking off the top of my head. Sorry, I didn't sleep well last night, so everything today is just kind of scattered. But anyway, as you can see, that worked, and we're now able to do this because we flipped the switch. Anyway, that was this tutorial. The counting in combat, but again, mostly just doing things in battle and also showing an example of common events. Next time we get to painting restoration, which is probably the most complicated of every puzzle type to script in my entire puzzle collection project. So that'll be exciting. I will see you then.